If you're in a second marriage, own a home worth over 800,000 jointly with your partner, and have children from your first relationship, your setup might feel secure now, but it could leave them exposed later. Two homes can look identical on paper, both names on the title, both partners with a will, both families assuming it has all been dealt with, and still they can produce very different outcomes when the first person dies. The uncomfortable part is nobody has to do anything dishonest for it to go wrong. The paperwork can simply be pointing in different directions. One document says one thing, the property title says another, and the title often gets there first. So if your thinking is the house is in both our names, we have wills, the survivor will be fine, the children will get their share later, pause on that for a moment. The useful question is not whether the house is in both names, is what sort of joint ownership you actually have and whether your will is built to match it. Take Karen and Michael, second marriages, both in their 60s, house worth about 840k. Karen has two adult daughters from her first relationship. Michael has one son. They wanted what many blended families want, keep the surviving spouse secure in the home and still make sure each side's children are treated fairly in the end. On paper, they felt sorted, housed in both names, will signed a few years ago. They thought job done. But there are really two separate questions inside that plan. First, can the survivor stay in the home and feel secure after the first death? Second, who ultimately receives the value tied up in that home later on? People often merge those into one question, which they aren't the same. In plain English, there are two broad ways a couple can own the same property together. With one, when the first person dies, their interest passes automatically to the survivor. It doesn't wait for the will to direct the house. With the other, each person's share remains distinct, so their will may have something real to work on. That difference sounds dry until it lands in a family. If that home is owned in the first way and Karen dies first, Michael may become the sole owner automatically, not half owner, the sole owner. So Karen's will may still be perfectly valid, but it does not control something she no longer owns at death in the same way she thought it did. Now, think about what happens in the real world after the first death. Usually, nobody's trying to have a legal argument about title structure. The families grieving, forms are being completed, banks are being told. The home is simply treated as having passed to the surviving spouse because that's what the ownership says happens. Everyone tells themselves that fairness will be dealt with later, and later can end up being a really long time. Michael might live for another 10, 15, 20 years. He may stay exactly as he is, and the outcome can still drift. He could rewrite his will, he could remarry, he could face pressure from his own side of the family, he could need care, he could sell the home and buy somewhere else, or he could simply mean to sort it out and never get round to it. That doesn't mean there's any kind of bad intentions. It just requires full control to have moved to one person. So Karen's daughters may spend years assuming they're protected because mum owned half the house. But ownership and expectation are not the same thing. Once Michael owns the whole property outright, the future path of that value sits with him. Now, let's make Karen's position concrete. Karen thought, if I die first, Michael is safe in the house, and when he dies, my girls will still benefit from my half one day. What may actually happen is Karen dies, the property passes automatically to Michael, he owns 100%, and from that moment, the final destination of the house value depends on his future decisions and his circumstances, not hers. There's another layer here as well. Some couples trying to kind of solve two human problems at once, and they accidentally solve neither properly. They want compassion for the surviving spouse and fairness for the children. If the setup is too loose, the children are exposed. If it's too rigid, the survivor may feel threatened or trapped. Good estate planning is usually about separating those two concerns, then joining them back together in a coherent way. So the better question is not, is joint ownership good or bad? It depends on the family and the objectives. The better question is, does the legal ownership of the house actually produce the family outcome we think it does? Start with the first practical check. Do you know how the property is legally held? Not just whose names are on it. Many people don't actually know. They know it's in both names. They don't know the structure behind it. Second, read your will with the house in mind. Does the will assume you have a share that can be directed on death? If so, is that consistent with the title to the property? A well drafted will can still miss the target if the ownership does not give it anything to control. Third, be honest about the family aim. Is the priority that the survivor has full freedom? Is it the children from each side are protected? Or is it kind of a balance of both? Because vague intentions like we want it to be fair are not enough on their own. Fairness needs a structure. And one more thing, if the house has been sold and replaced, if you remarried, if family relationships changed, or if the wills were done years ago, not revisited, that is often where the mismatch starts. Plans don't usually fail with a bang, they drift. For some families, the answer may involve changing the way the property is held. For others, it may be more about how the wills are drafted around the house and the survivor's position. I'm not saying there's like one arrangement that suits everybody because there isn't. The point is simpler than that. Your ownership and your will need to be working together. If they're not, the home can head off in a direction you didn't intend. And if you want a quick reality test, ask yourself this. If one of you died this year, who'd actually control the house value after the first death? And what would stop that outcome changing later? If their answer is vague or based on trust rather than structure or a plan, then that is worth looking at properly. For second marriage families, both names on the house can sound like protection, which sometimes it is, sometimes it's just a comforting description. The more important question is whether your current setup really protects the survivor, the children, or neither as cleanly as you think.